we'll call the meeting to order, please, and ask for a roll call.
Mrs. Reyes,
Here.
Mrs. Sashanek,
Here.
Mr. Saniceros,
Here.
Mrs. Contreras,
Here.
and Mrs. Barnett. Here.
Thank you. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. And we'll have a moment of silence. Dr. Freeman, it looks like you're going to pretty much command this meeting, so I'm going to turn it over to you to provide information.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just kicking us off. So as you look at this item in Assembly, what you can see is we've basically taken the org chart and the organization and divided it into three big chunks. I'm starting with the first A, Administrative Resources, which will kind of set the stage for the other two, B and C, Instructional and Human Resources, Financial and Operational Resources. So tonight is one of the, pre-scheduled and annual study sessions that we do with the board. So this is a review of operations, how the district works, and most of the information that we have outward facing to the community. I would say for the most part, when we talk about communication, we talk about push and pull. So when we send media out, we push information out. When people want to know about the district, we can pull them into the website. So only when people usually have questions or problems will they start digging deeply into the website looking for things. But we've tried to make it a great resource for the community. There was a time before we had school webmasters when we were, well, I'm in the middle now.
We can give you a minute to get in.
No, I've got all kinds. I got paper backup. Batteries never go dead on a piece of paper. So we shifted from internal building of the web page to webmasters, and I don't know if board remembers, there was a time when we got questioned about accessibility. There was actually some vision advocates. We've added a whole bunch of features with the help of them. So we're constantly working to make the web page accessible and informational for the community. When we first started building it, we built it for ourselves, almost for internal use that was out facing. And so we revised that, but one of the things that happens now is as we go through to review this to present it to the board, we find the links that are out of date and things that need to be cleaned up and taken care of. I think there probably still are a few more, but the meeting tonight will allow you, in the way this is organized, to learn a lot about the district. The resources that are on the web and in Assembly, we're not going to read to you from cover to cover tonight, but you'll know where the information is if you want to go back and dig deeper or read more about things. Or of course it would be, they said now there's so many minutes of video on YouTube, nobody could watch it in their lifetime if they started at birth. And so there's more information here than people need. But as members of the board, you can be aware of what is in there, what some of the content is. You can refer to it yourself as you think it relates to your governance role, and you can refer constituents or other people to it if they want to know, because you know where it is and they don't. And once they do, then they'll be able to be as caught up on that. And we think, too, having that information just increases the sense of transparency of the school district, that we have as much outward-facing stuff as we are able to do. You'll see maybe a couple scenarios later on, like with safety, where we'll tell you how comprehensive the plan is, but not necessarily reveal the details to the bad guys. So in the next slide, then, what I want to do is talk about the administrative resources and where those sit on the web page. So we have all of this information and a lot of work with the community and the management team to put this together. But this kind of kicks off the basic information of the school district. So we have the administration, and what happens is if you go through here, you can see who all the people are, and you can contact them by email or to their office. So we're pretty accessible to the community. This is really the top couple layers of the org chart, and then adding Rocio, who's reception out front and does a lot of communications with us as well, checks our customer service line. If we go back to where the org chart is linked, you can see then when that comes up how the district is organized and how the presentation tonight is going to be organized. The top three groups, the superintendent and administrative resources, then in yellow, the academic officer, and in green, the operations officer. So those are the three chunks that we're working on, and they're going to talk about all the things that are down the org chart from their position. Right, and so if we go to 5A1, what we have here is a description of all of that, and we're not going to go into each one of these offices tonight, but this is basically your administrative team. So we have those two boxes we showed you at the top, but all of the other directors and people that work to support the delivery of that program. And then we have the org chart link on that item. If I may, we've been working a lot in the communications department on your bios and your leadership and our leadership bios. So if we go back to that staff page that has, you can see, for instance, let's click on the biography of Dr. Haid. What we've done working with Dan is to try to put together some key information to make people familiar with the staff that work here, and we've aligned that for the same thing for governing board members. So we can do a couple examples of those. It starts out when she came to the school district, some of the things she's done and some accomplishments in the role she's played and organizations she's participated in. Back out of there, Jim, let's go ahead and open the superintendents. Same thing, came to the school district in 2006, 2007. A little bit about background. We placed pretty high in the priority people's why statement, like why you're on the board, why you work with kids, those kind of things, because we think it's important and probably a point of interest for people. Let's do one more and do Mr. French. And you can say the same thing. When he came to the school district, why he's left banking and come to work in schools. It's a great story, actually. And what some of his experience has been in, again, professional organizations and those kind of things. So we want, for one thing, the familiarity with the community, but also confidence that you have a highly qualified team working to manage the district. We also have, if we scroll down a little bit, in Assembly, I'm sorry, you were in the right spot. Executive director bios. and that takes you to the same place, only further down. I don't know if, Madam President, we want to take more time to read them. We probably, when we get a little further, can show you one of the governance bios. So,
Does the board want to look at all the bios now, or would you prefer just to go and look at them on your own time? Okay.
yeah.
I think, thank you for that.
I wanted you to be aware where they were and what the format was and why they're organized the way they are.
Perfect.
Okay. So then let's go to the mission, vision, and values of the school district. This has been worked on off and on since the late 2000s, 2007. And when we've done the monitoring report, which is the standing October study session of the board, we talk a little bit about the process and when some of those changes were made. And one of the things that we did when we went through and added the leadership goal in 2011 is we revised the mission statement to have high quality, comprehensive, leading and learning opportunities through the guiding principles of the governing board. I think we added high quality and we added learning and leading. And I don't know that those made it into policy A, but this isn't actually the first policy of the governing board book, policy A, which is the mission and vision of the school district. And so revisions to that go through all of you in first and second read. But we also have the values, and this was done as part of a cultural consensus building process that involved every employee in the school district. And they start with I statements, but you really could replace the I with students or staff or board members or superintendents do what they say they're going to do, and they use discretion with those who confide in them. And so we do value surveys on occasion, not every year. I can tell you the pattern is pretty consistent. If we ask administrators, teachers, or kids and parents if they adhere to these values, everybody rates themselves higher than the other two groups. So everybody thinks that violations of values come from other people. Anyway, these do help us provide a framework for talking about the culture we want to have in the school district, both with our staff and with our kids and with our community. So that was a lot of work. They broke into teams, then the teams built consensus, then the team leaders met to build consensus amongst them, and with the interest of defining, what dedication would look like in a culture. And so that work has been done, and that hasn't changed for over a decade now, those values. I think when we first started doing that, I was a little worried. I actually told the consultant, like, what happens if they pick values that aren't my values? And then does that mean superintendent has to leave? And he's like, look, you guys are close enough together, you just need to sort this stuff out. And that's not gonna happen. People share a lot of values, especially in the way we discuss and express them. Actually walking the talk is a little harder than the talk. And so it's a good point of reference for us. So the next thing we have then in A3 is the guiding principles. And those were developed back in 2006. Kathy was actually part of the group. President Reyes was part of the group. We went over to Estrella Mountain and once again worked on groups, brainstormed, and then did some wordsmithing. And the idea of the guiding principles are that they are both broad and specific enough to help guide our work. So we use shorthand on these a lot. They're bulleted right there. Students reach their fullest potential, balanced academic core curriculum. And the shorthand for that is every child's a learner. The interactions between student, staff, community partners are respectful, collaborative, safe, and orderly. That's our safety principle. The third one is families or partners. We started out, when that was originally written, it said parents. And somewhere along the board, I don't remember what year, we had the recognition that not all families are composed of the same kind of people and configuration. We had kids living with aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas. And so when they take on that nuclear form, you know, all the families are our families, and they have lots of different configurations. So we changed the word a little bit to fit the context. Number 4 is that we have a competent, dedicated, and caring staff. Number 5 is a meaningfully involved community. And number 6 is that we run as an effective organization. So we have if we go, I think that was that on the governing board site. Let's go to guiding principles where they're posted. That was right. Scroll down, there they are. So then you can see, and this is on about our district, right? So if you go down a little further, you can see that there's the mission statement and then the programs. That's all an introduction for the parents. Then if we go back to Assembly, there's another link. And this is the governing board link. So it talks a little bit about the governing board, when your meetings are, what your role is. And if you scroll down a little, well, you can see in the other corner there the link to Assembly for board meetings, the dates, YouTube recordings, all of that accessible to the community. The role of governments has to do with a lot with what we do with the goal monitoring cycle and the setup of roles. But we basically divide the work of the district into a governance team and a management team. And we talk about that usually each year when we do the monitoring report. But in the governance cycle, there's 3 steps that really belong to the board, and there's 3 steps that belong to the management. And the way that works is they're both happening at the same time. The board talks to the management team about gathering information from them, you know, things that are happening in the legislature, things that are happening in the market, the economy, the State Department, the U.S. Department of Ed. The board also provides feedback to the management team about things they're hearing from constituents, concerns that they may have moving forward. And so there's essentially, if you think of like in any neighborhood, a picket fence across which we communicate with each other. The management team helps inform the governing board in their role of evaluating, setting priorities and policy for the district. And the governing board helps inform the management team on how they're doing with implementing that. And so the management team really is the implementer, and the governance team really is setting the direction. So we've established board goals. They were originally done in 2006, but they've been amended 2 or 3 times now. So they are organized under those guiding principles. So when we say every student's a learner, we mean we have a viable, consistent core curriculum, we have differentiation, and we have kids that can master college and career ready standards. That's the state test and the other tests that we give. And when we say safe and orderly, we mean that students and staff in our community and their behavior is appropriate. When we say parents are our partners, that means that I don't know what essential to child success, that's not a goal, is it? Employees, families communicate with the director. There's something yet. I might just be having trouble seeing it.
Where are you reading?
I'm looking at the
Governing board goals?
the goals, yeah.
And what are you, our essential, what do you?
Are essential to a child's success.
Recognizing that as partners in education,
It finishes the sentence. All right, I was looking for a complete, I'm like, what happened to that sentence? All right, well, okay, so this is just another example of the board informing the superintendent
Of our goals.
of their goals. So those are up for everybody to see, and then let's go down and look at members, and start with the biography of President Reyes. I hope she turned in her work.
I said, how many sentences? He said, not many, okay. Just how it went down?
So essentially, the stuff that you've given to Dan has been put up there, and
Yeah, I put my.
oh, you haven't reviewed your final one yet?
No, I put a
All
little
right.
glamour in it. It looks
So there's more to come. Okay. So we won't go through all of them then. They're going to be updated. Do you know when, Ms. Garrison? You'll get a chance to review before they go up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that's what we had up before. And we're working to make it better, right? Is that,
More,
okay.
more.
Well, we want to be consistent.
I like the different shades of blue we have behind us.
Well,
That depends on where you go to get your picture.
That is true. What
I
school?
think it's also the year that you get it.
yeah. If you want, we can have a round where everybody
I
goes.
appreciate the different shades of blue. I'm not trying to say.
Change the background a few times.
I like it. I think it's, we'll just get you all on a green screen and we can
I think the
change it
one they
anytime
took
we
of
want.
mine is now fixed. I think they look good different. They don't have to all be the same.
And the same thing's on there is when your term started and those kind of things. So, we're in governance now. Are we, Jim, are we on 5-4? 5-3, 5-4.
Were we supposed to talk about district goals? You'd have that under.
We just read those. Yes, but I think there's a question if the goals are working for you, if they're adequate, or if you want to make time to discuss them. And I don't know how much. If we go back to Assembly 3A, A3A, Jim, and scroll down.
So we're talking about the goals for 23, 24, right?
Well, they're currently the goals that we have for the current year, which is fiscal year 22-23. So if you want to change them for 23-24,
Exactly.
would be the question, yeah.
Okay.
Is so one of the things that the people who work on organizational improvement tell you is never have more than 3 goals.
Right.
And so what we think is like, if you look at the guiding principles, like keeping kids safe, having dedicated teachers, families involved, of those 6 things, which one do you not want to have?
Right.
Like, let's get rid of safety and just have learning?
We've had this discussion before.
Many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So what we do, for instance, when the board works on goals for the superintendent, is you pick 3 things. And that ends up being kind of hard sometimes. What we found before, like, we'll get low scores in math, so we'll put a lot of emphasis into math, and the math scores goes up, but then the reading scores don't. It's almost like you're rushing from one side of the boat to the other because it's listing. And so we do want to pick sometimes if things are a priority. It seems like, I think the staff feels like, number 1 is always a priority, consistent curriculum and test scores. Because whether it's fair or not, there's a lot of emphasis put on those in judging school districts. What we find in the literature and the history of school districts is you have 3 purposes, 3 fundamental purposes. One is to keep kids safe and provide a custodial function while parents are at work and the kids are at school. So physical, personal safety. The other is social development, working together, getting along, and being ready for interaction in a workplace, constructive play, constructive work. And the third is developing academic progress towards skills and knowledge. And what happens is academic skills and knowledge tend to be politically prioritized, but every mom knows keeping their kids safe is the most important thing. So those three things are held in inverse in priority depending on the community that you're talking about. One of the discussions could be if there's something constructed in here that's not clear, that's off target.
So are you asking us to take a look at the 13, 14 that there are and see if there's recommendations to consolidate them or make them?
Really, it'd be anything that's not working. And I think one of the things, because the other meeting we have, which has been kind of a standing study session for the board, is in April, which is forward-looking about into the next year. Really, starting this conversation early in January is thinking about, in the roles of governance, you're going to start setting priorities and resources, consulting on the budget and those things. So if there's one of these things that becomes more important or less important, that plays a role in establishing resources and the budget as we go down the road.
Right.
You don't have to amend it tonight. You can amend it in April. I think, like a lot of things you read, there may not be anything that strikes you on first glance, but on reflection, you might have a question about. The longer you've been on the board, you've seen this more times, so maybe have some ideas. We did kind of want to stop and pause in the meeting and see if there was a point of reflection or.
So maybe give everybody time to go through it, think about it, and then I do think April is it's a study session, it's forward thinking. Maybe that's the place where we come and say these goals, are outdated, they need them changed. What does people think of that?
I agree.
I like that.
All right, so we will be able to prepare and discuss, each of us will bring our ideas forward in April, and then see how that affects the goal direction. Is that fair enough?
I would say the same's true for guiding principles, but when you look at them, it's kind of hard to change one. Goals are a little more strategic. And then remember, when we did the monitoring report, 2 new members weren't here for it last year and prior years. But the next thing that happens is the management team then takes your goal and builds strategies around it that are measurable and have artifacts. So, and that was some of what we presented to you in October. So they are really kind of the building blocks of getting information back to you that we use.
And can you just remind us of the April date, why we're stopping here?
So, as a general rule, for members of the board who are new, we meet on the second Tuesday of the month is the standard meeting.
Right.
That gets moved for fall and spring break sometimes to adjust to break. We do our special meetings on the 4th Tuesday. So essentially, you could be having a board meeting every other Tuesday. We don't meet just to meet, so if there's not a reason for a study session, we won't have them. We usually have 4 or 5 special sessions on the 4th Tuesday, and then we have 12 regular sessions on the 2nd Tuesday on a monthly basis.
So are you saying if I open my calendar, I'd look at the 4th Tuesday and that's the date?
I think it'd be April 25th, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Thanks. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And depending on how much time you want to spend in that, if it's going to be 2 or 3 hours, you can do it at 6 o'clock. If you want to spend more time, which you might consider having new members on the board, then you need to carve out a day. If you're at work, put in for a day off, whatever you need to do. So we have done full days in the past, especially when we had new members. And I think, if you said you had a 4-year term, if you did at least 1 or 2 full days during a 4-year term, that's probably as much as most people want to do, because a lot of what happens in the district is the same from year to year. There are changes, but there's also routines. So school starts in the fall every year and ends in the spring. Like, we're not changing that. We try to get out, when you look at the calendar, by Memorial Day. The kids are divided into grade levels and classrooms, like big stuff like that every year. Those aren't things that we really look at changing, so some things are pretty consistent.
And are we going to do it here? I know in the past we've done it at Westmark in the,
We can see if that room is available.
I don't know what everyone thinks.
It's a nice conference room. It
gives you a different focus, a little more different energy in it.
Well, it's good for staff because we're away from phones and secretaries and other people who are going to interrupt us.
Is there any
If-
concern with going to, it's right there at the Glendale?
Westgate,
Yes.
We went there before,
Yeah, I know.
and,
I just-
and,
Kathy and I were the only ones that were there.
Yeah, that's why I was just saying it's there.
but you guys liked it,
Right, I liked it, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I think we're the only two that were at
Right.
that one.
so they have to trust you. Thank you.
And what are you thinking, 6, half a day, early morning, late, what's the consensus?
I guess I would wanna see more what's on our agenda. I mean, if it's just this one thing, I think 6 is fine. If we end up with a few other things that get added to it, you know what I mean?
But I think we've seen small agendas go long.
I disagree with that either.
So
Well-
I'm just thinking, only because if I need a vacation, I need to put it in. I'm just trying to figure
There's,
out what I'm doing.
in the past, Madam President, you guys have worked on your 4 board goals. You've done your board self-assessment survey
Yeah, we did.
and gone over feedback. So there's a number of things you can put into that session, and you don't have to decide it all tonight. I think the first answer is yes, we do want to meet, maybe in between now and April, talk about things that could be part of the day. I think there is at some point the need to put in for a day and be able to get it, the sooner you do that, usually the better.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
so we can
Will we
get.
have a facilitator?
We can get a facilitator. That often helps. It allows everybody else in the meeting to stay engaged with the content instead of thinking about what's
I'm only asking
next.
because it's almost February and you need to get a facilitator.
The group that we use for the leadership curriculum for the school district really was kind of founded out of the Pacific Institute. And I think the last time you had Laurel from TPI, and you had Julie Bacon from School Boards Association, and they kind of split the day. And Laurel's work is on organizational effectiveness and leadership, and Julie's work was on effective school board governance, effective traits and behaviors of effective boards. So, and it filled the day. You go over it and have discussion and things like that in the group. So it doesn't take very long to fill 2 half-days. Your evening is kind of like 1 half-day. If you're going to do more than that, you can need a day. I would say the other thing that happens is it really allows you to have more time to talk between yourselves than you get at the DS, and some face-to-face conversation. Break bread at lunch and build constructive relationships between members of the board.
So it sounds like we've agreed we'll go off-site. We know the date now, and then you'll just see if the facilitator is available, and then we'll come back to you with times.
We have a handful of people we can talk to see if they're available, and
Okay.
then we'll have to work with you and the board to put the agenda together.
Okay.
Probably what we'll do is work in big chunks with the board, and then have the facilitators help us with the details.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, that's governance. So one of the things we've done over the years, and we did this with the help of the School Boards Association, is sorry, I skipped ahead. This is progress monitoring. So I referred to this already, which is the monitoring report. And we went over this in October in a modified form. So President Reyes and Member Sosnick may be able to talk to this a little bit. We had those 14 goals, and we had this expansive number of strategies and data points to where they were flipping through lots of pages of a binder that got bigger every year. And during the pandemic, we really pulled back from that. We were really just trying to keep things up and running. And after the pandemic, we tried to present a more condensed version. So before the pandemic, we had a graph that showed the kilowatt hour usage of each site overlaid over all the sites, overlaid over 24 months. And you know what you see is when it's hot, it peaks. And so that data had been pretty consistently printed. What we looked for in the report last year was things that were new, unique, and changing, or really important. So test scores, and things like that were included. And tried to prioritize and streamline some of that data. But there's a lot more data from the district than was presented in the monitoring report. And, we can modify that based on the interests of the board. So the way this works is what's happening right now is the discussion we're having is going to lead to the board setting up the priorities for the fiscal 24 year. The management team's going to go out and run the 24 year. At the end of the 24 year in the fall, we're going to bring all the data back together and then report it in the monitoring report. If you think of the budget cycle, it works the same way. We're going to set priorities for the budget, and then we're going to propose a budget in June. And so it takes a couple months to put that together. It goes out to the paper, and then you have an opportunity for community feedback. The board adopts the budget in July. We run the budget through the year, and one of the things that you see in your consent agenda is the progress of the district through the expenditure budget. And then at June 30th, we wrap it all up and put together a comprehensive annual financial report, which takes, another 90 days, which you're gonna review the AFR and the CAFR in a board meeting. So all of the other data runs pretty much just like the business data. You're gonna be setting up the year for next year. We're gonna do our best to implement it, find teachers and solve problems. And then that final budget's gonna come back, and the data from the last year is gonna come back. And we'll give all of that to you to inform you, to help you set the priorities for fiscal 25. So these things are always happening. Right now, the kids and the teachers are out there doing teaching and learning. And we're talking about guiding principles, goals, priorities, and resources for next year. So the school year's running, and we're looking ahead. We're gonna get them going, and then we're gonna look behind at how it went, evaluate that to help learn from that about the next time we set resources. So the progress monitoring and reporting on goals and financial data is continuous and ongoing in that fiscal year cycle. Does it make sense? Okay. All right, let's look then at 5A, 4A in operational roles. There's a famous story about a superintendent in a small town who fired a custodian for giving cigarettes to kids that were underage. And then the superintendent lost their job because the custodian was a beloved member of the community and related to a lot of board members. So the question is, should you fire the custodian giving cigarettes to kids before you talk to the board or after you talk to the board? And this activity was developed by the School Boards Association, and it's been added to, and go ahead and open it, Jim. It's been added to and refined and modified over time, by consideration of the board by having these things added to this chart. So these are operational responsibilities, and they're divided into 4 categories. And this is not something that we made up. This came from the School Boards Association. Just want to do the 4 categories on top. Number 1, complete authority. Number 2, authority in keeping the board informed. Number 3, board action required. And number 4 is advisory authority with board discussion and action. And so we've gone through each of these, and if you see, like this is in planning. So number 3 is set the district calendar. That comes to the board. Like the superintendent doesn't set the district calendar and just let you know when school's starting. We form committees, we get recommendations, we try to align with Tolleson, and then we bring that before you for action. So it's checked in box number 3. The next one is mission, vision, and goals. We have a discussion with staff and board about that and really work collaboratively to put that together. That's a 4. District annual monitoring report data targets. We work with the management team on that, but we report it back to you when the work is done, so you know what we're doing. But we don't get you in the middle of the work. And so each of these has been laid out with kind of the idea that nobody's going to come back later and say, why didn't you have us vote on that? There's a number of things in here that the board votes on, but let's look at one of them that's number 1. Implement programs according to board policies. Like, you don't check with the board if you're implementing a board policy, you're just doing what the policy says, right? And then change in school attendance to distance learning. Guess when that came up? And how are we going to do that? And what we decided was, and this was important at the time, that if there was and in fact I think the board added the word short term to the end of that, if there was an immediate safety concern of the staff, we would send kids home, but the board would review the decision. When it came time to come back, we would ask the board. So if you feel like there's an impending threat, you take action without forming a committee. But if you think the threat is past, you involve the board in that decision about when it's time to come back. So that was something that we had to put in place pretty quick, I think back in 2019. Anyway, if you scroll through these, you'll see the next section is in personnel. We're going to go pretty fast now. There's a lot of action in personnel we take. There's a lot of action in finance that you guys ratify. So here's support services. And then curriculum and instruction. If we just keep going, budget and finance, community relations. So the idea has been that instead of waiting till there's a problem between governance and management team, is try to brainstorm what some of those things might be and what the expectations are, and try to be consistent in that. If we need to change them, we talk about them. And what that role should be like. We really have had, for a long time, a no surprises agreement, that you don't suddenly change something on somebody and then find out about it after the fact. If we want to make a change, we do it together through discussion. So that's the work of the management team and the board in the past. We don't have it on the agenda to change, but I think you can put it on the agenda anytime if there's a topic in there that you want to talk about roles. Okay, the next item, B. So policies used to be in these 2 giant blue 4-inch binders, and you had to take papers out and put papers in. We would send you home with them. So your board policy binder, you know, in your kitchen by your cookbook was always up to date. It's all electronic now. The community has the same access to it you do, so they don't have to call you to find out about a policy. So those are electronic. We have the meeting as electronic, and so are the policies. There's a supporting link down below, which is the district policies. And Ada and I, or Ms. Sillis and I were just talking about giving some feedback to the School Boards Association. The first time you look at this, it looks like you need a password to get in. Mm-hmm. So, Jim, if you just go back one space, you know, this is what we're going to tell them, but like if you guys see any of the ladies that work there, you see the private access and public access that are at the bottom. We think public access should be the first thing under Policy Bridge, then private access, then username. So when you look at Policy Bridge, the first thing you see is public access, all you gotta do is click. Now we can scroll down and find Littleton. Most of the school districts are members of the school board policy service. That's changing. There used to be maybe 4 or 5 who wrote their own policy books. But the trust is putting together a policy group as well. So we've signed on for a couple more years of school board policy just for consistency and give a little time to see what work the trust is gonna do. And what we're kind of hoping is if there's 2 groups working on that, the competition creates a little better service and maybe quality product. But when you go down and find Littleton and you open that up, you can see all the folders open by sections of policy. And the sections of policy have names. Don't open it yet. So your first section of policy is all the foundations, and that's A. So you can see B is everything that has to do with board operations. Then you have general school administration, finance, support, facilities, personnel, instruction, students, school community relations, and then education agency relations. So those are big headings if you think, you know, kind of more along the lines of the Dewey Decimal System. You put the big chunks down and then you just label them A, B, C, D, D, A, B, C, D, E, I'm sorry. So if you want to know about, you know, what the board's supposed to do, you go to B and you click on that and it will open up to all of the B policies. And then they're alpha descending. So B is the most simple, but the next thing is BA. And if there's more stuff to write under that BA heading, you can see that it's going to be the next one down, BAA. So if it's part of BA, the next one would be BAB, BAC, BAD. If it doesn't fit in BA anymore, it's going to be a B or a BB. And they're organized by subject and heading. And so once you know the category, so if you want to know a policy about student suspension, you would, Jim, if you back out, you want to know about student suspension, you go down and find students, and then you can scroll down to find suspensions, or you can go up to the search for bar and type in the word, Jim, before you do that, click on Littleton. I'll show you this little trick. If you click on Littleton, it will search Littleton. If you don't click there, it's going to search every policy in Arizona. So we're going to put in the word suspensions, and then it's going to show you all the policies where the word suspension is. And that might make it a little easier if you have a parent who's concerned about a suspension or a procedure and you don't have that memorized. You can log into Assembly, type in suspension, look at the policy and procedure, and be a little more informed about that. Parents can go find this too. They're just not always going to know where to look and how to find it, and you will. Do you want to sample any more, or have you had enough?
Does the board want to look at more? Hearing none, no.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, but I think, you know, part of our goal tonight is to give you the tools and where they're located. So when you need them, you can access them. Okay, then moving on to, let's see, the policy link on the governing board page. We have 4 kinds of elections. And what you're going to see is we have M&O election scheduled for November, capital override and bond, and then election or appointment of governing board members. So before we click on that, Jim, let's go back to the board page because I think we have a link to, if we keep, meetings, scroll down a little bit, board meeting agendas, monitoring special links, school board association, governing board elections. So for people who are interested in governing board elections, getting on the board, what the terms are, that is mostly handled by the county superintendent's office. We don't do anything with it. The other three we do. So those are pretty key links for governance, is the School Boards Association, the policy manual, and elections for the governing board. That's all outward facing for the community. All right, we can go back then, Jim, to the last thing, which I'm going to show you just where the information is. Because the way elections work is, other than governing board, you need to call for the election. The superintendent doesn't call elections, the board does. And so there is information on what budget overrides, M&O and capital and bond is used for. And we did have a couple years ago, Mr. French do a little, I think 3 meetings in a row, information on school finance. And if you want to come back and revisit those at some time, especially either as you're setting the board budget or reviewing the financial report, some of that I think School Boards Association covers. Is there budget information in Bolts? I don't remember. Or is it mostly
But it's not.
very superficial? Yeah. So that information is all also outward facing on the website. The last item in this section is the district profile, 5A5. And most of this is also available on the website. We've pulled together a lot of historical information and then tried to update and add to it. So for instance, in the last sentence of the first paragraph, in 2022, we're now in Legislative District 22. It used to be 19. Before that, the district actually was part of 3 different legislative districts. We sit solidly in the middle of LD 22 now, and we were a big chunk of LD 19, which is kind of nice for us. We only have 1 senator and 2 representatives to work with in advocating for the school district instead of trying to do 9. And that's not true of all districts. We are part of the Tolleson Union system. And so one of the things that we added was West Point High. That didn't used to exist a couple years ago. So those have been updated, but a lot of the stuff is pretty consistent. The district in this iteration was formed in 1912, same year as statehood. So we're 110. I don't know about you, I'm feeling every year of it. We have, if you scroll down a little further, we have a lot of facilities, a lot of square feet under roof, a lot of acres that we maintain, and we'll be adding, next time you see this, we'll be adding Lake and Prep to the list of our facilities. There's a little bit of history on naming, so people might wonder where Collier or Quinton or some of those names came from, and some of that is explained in the district's history as well. There is a policy on naming facilities, policy FF. That means it was in that big section F on facilities. That works out good. F is for facilities. And so it's, A, B, C, D, E, F down the line if you want to attribute names to buildings. We have calendar information when the state went from 175 to 180 days, when we tried to extend the school year, and when we came back to 180 days, and then the calendar work that you all have been doing with reviewing calendars for instruction and for our workforce for 12, 11, and 10-month employees. And so those are under review again for next year, and they'll be coming up for discussion and action. And let's see, there's several links added to the bottom of this. The information in Assembly on the history, the calendars will be linked back, and the state does a school report card system. It's been under construction, and they've been adding and subtracting things. We don't spend a lot of time looking at that. The state board discusses that, not the district board. But we wanted to be open about that being a resource for parents in the community. That's the overview, and our intention tonight is for me to spend the most time on the first part because of the role of governance and your part in it. The staff for the next two parts is going to spend less time in links and content, but try to give you an overview of all the information available. But what they are ready to do is at any point you want to stop and know a little bit more, entertain your questions as we go. But I will be the one of the three that went into the most depth and spent the most time because how it relates to your work.
Okay. And you're turning this over now? Go back to-
So, Madam President, that ends Section A, and the next thing on your agenda is Section B, HAID, Instructional and Human Services.
Madam President, members of the board, my section discusses information on the Instructional Resources Division, which encompasses teaching and learning, employees, family and enrollment services, exceptional learners, leadership and supervision, communication services, and technology. I am privileged to have many good people who assist me with this large task. I have 2 executive directors, which you'll hear from tonight, 5 directors, a coordinator, a supervisor, teachers, and support staff. So we will move along to the first section, 5.1b, which is employees. So I do lead the Human Resources Department along with a director, a coordinator, a supervisor, and 3 support staff members. And we currently employ just over 650 people. This number includes teachers and administrators, psychologists, nurses, and support staff members, and all of them are divided into 3 employee groups. We refer to these as certified, classified, and administration. We work to maintain high standards of ethical conduct and professional competency, and it's important that all employees are not only held to the same standard, but they also be treated fairly. An interesting fact is Dr. Freeman talked about the mission, vision, and values. In 2011, a district committee that was representative of all employee groups created the Littleton Employee Code of Conduct. This was created to better define expectations, make employees aware of board policies, and clearly outline a progressive system of discipline, all of which is related back to the board policies that Dr. Freeman referenced. The links attached to this particular item will take you to the Human Resources page and to a copy of the District Code of Conduct. The next section I have for you this evening is recruitment and retention, which is probably has just increased in importance every year I've been here. So a function of the Human Resources Department is recruitment and retention, and we use an online application system to gather information from employment candidates. We have recruitment efforts all year for all positions, and we work to recruit teachers year-round in order to make every effort to fill our positions with the best and brightest. So as we speak, we are recruiting teachers for the following, the upcoming school year. So if you know anyone, just, have them click on the webpage. We recruit both in and out of state. We use online tools, provide an incentive for employees to help us recruit staff to the district, and have a successful partnership with NAU and the new Pipeline to Teacher program that we won the award for just a few months ago. And additionally, we place student teachers from all colleges and universities, even some out of state. We also partner with Teach for America, and we have a long-standing partnership with them, and we're one of Arizona's top partners. Our job openings and employment information, such as work calendars, can be found on the Human Resources page, and the link is the same as the one provided in the previous item. The next item I have is the visiting teacher and temp pool. We use an automated placement system called ASOP to track and fill absences for teachers and administrators. This allows us to communicate vital information to our guest teachers, including specific start times for the jobs they select, and any special information or notes that the guest teacher or that the administrator or human resources might need on that particular staff member. Substitute services are both internally filled and through a procured service. ESI is the company that currently employs all of our temporary substitutes, but permanent subs are employees of the district. I talked a little bit and referenced about procured professional service that has become more important in the work in human resources. So some positions are difficult to fill, and in those cases, we procure instructional services to meet the needs of students. When we can't obtain these positions, we obtain services through contract companies, and at times we procure services of nurses or speech language pathologists, their assistants, occupational therapists, physical therapists, teachers of visually or hard of hearing, and adaptive physical education teachers. And sometimes, when we can't find our own, some school psychologists, but we've been very fortunate for that. The next item is compensation and performance-based pay. We consistently strive to be competitive by analyzing salaries and wages for all employment groups. These schedules are annually approved by the board and are available on the website for review. We also make every effort to create opportunities for employees to share ideas or concerns. And so one of the committees that has been longstanding in the district since 2008, the LEAP Committee, which stands for the Littleton Employee Advisory Partnership. We meet monthly to discuss human resource issues, working conditions, compensation and compression problems, instructional calendars, and the classroom site fund. This committee, I do run this committee, and members include representatives from all sites and buildings, as well as all employee groups, and representation from the Littleton Education Association. There are performance compensation plans for all employee groups that the LEAP Committee reviews and recommends to the board. Certified teachers are under the Classroom Site Fund, while the two other employee groups are compensated based on district student achievement. And there is a link on this particular item to the Classroom Site Fund plan that changes each year. Finally, under this section is our evaluation system, and we have these systems for all employee groups. The purpose of this is to provide feedback to employees in an effort to both reinforce and improve job performance. The process is a collaborative one between the employee and the supervisor, and evaluations help determine how well the objectives held by the school and the district are being carried out. They provide a basis for motivation and self-improvement and help personnel to be aware of strengths and weaknesses in order to improve the operation of our programs. All evaluation systems include goal setting as part of the process, and our system has moved to an electronic version in our Frontline Central system that houses all employment information, evaluation, contracts, and such. And if you have any questions on this area, I would be happy to answer them for you now. Thank you. The next section is curriculum and instruction. This department I do lead, and I'm supported by the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I have special project TOSAs and support staff members, and this department is responsible for the oversight of curriculum, instruction, professional development, and special services for students such as gifted, EL, and special education. The links underneath this particular item 5B2 take you to the department's web page, and they provide the district's adopted core curriculum and supplemental materials. To go into a little bit of in-depth on the educational resources side, item 5B2A, assessment. This is a vital component for measuring our progress. The curriculum instruction and the federal program and assessment departments support the delivery of instruction and aligned assessment. These directors work collaboratively with the district office as well as site administrators to ensure our instructional strategies are implemented in our district classrooms. The assessment director works collaboratively with a variety of stakeholders to develop an assessment calendar that includes district and state assessment, and the director works with site leaders on the administration of both state and district assessments. Another district committee, the Curriculum Action Team, or as we refer to it as the CAT, is instrumental in gathering and sharing information between those who do the work and those who execute the work. And so this is an opportunity for us to vet any issues that might come about, and it's something that we value by hearing their input. There are several links attached to this item for you to reference, and they go over both the state and district assessments. State and Federal Programs Department oversees and looks for and applies for a variety of local, state, and federal grants. This department is supported by the Executive Director of School Leadership as well as a director and a support staff member. The department oversees all grant programs, including Title I, II, III, and IV, as well as the continuous improvement efforts in collaboration with school and district leaders. The department supports building principles with the design of comprehensive needs assessment, root cause analysis, and integrated action plans, which are shared with the board. And you might remember at the last meeting, the mid-year updates were shared by the leaders. Several links are provided to the district, state, and federal levels below. It's quite exhausting, but if you would like to know the difference between all of those title programs, you may find the information there. The next item is the curriculum. Curriculum Instruction Department oversees the selection and implementation of core curriculum and supplemental resources. We have a 7-year curriculum review cycle that identifies when each content area resource will be reviewed and recommendations for purchase to the board. The adoption cycle is guided by our governing board policy and includes a public review of materials before bringing recommendations to the governing board. This is led by our Director of Curriculum Instruction. Implementation of the curriculum is collaborative between the director, the district, and school administrators, as well as instructional coaches. And they work collaboratively to ensure all teachers implement adopted and supplemental resources using research-based instructional strategies. Links are provided in this item to adopted and approved materials, core and supplemental. Next, we have exceptional learners. I'm supported in this area by a director, TOSAs, and support staff members. This department oversees special education, including district programs, privately placed students, preschool, 504 students, health services, voucher students, homebound students, and they also help the Human Resources Department in staffing special education and related service positions through procured services. This department also handles Medicaid billing, the child find process, where we identify students who need early intervention or screening for special education, and the child studies team process. Links are provided to the district webpage as well as the State Department of Education. Another special population we have are gifted learners. Our Curriculum and Assessment Department oversees the Littleton's gifted program called Exploring Potential. This director works collaboratively with support staff and the gifted teachers to test and place potential students using the established state guidelines. Exploring Potential teachers design lessons to meet the needs of their students and provide extension opportunities. We also support a flex program where students who are outside the range of gifted but still have high academic achievement are identified and also challenged using the gifted guidelines. The links provided in this particular item are our district plan, which is scheduled for review this year, as well as our district link for this area. The next item, English learners, is another area of importance for our community. The Curriculum and Instruction Department oversees Littleton's English language development services, which includes identification and placement of students with an English language need. These services are led by the director and supported by teachers on assignment and a classified staff member. We identify EL students, including a review of enrollment documents, assessment, and placement in the appropriate English language development program. These students who are placed in these programs receive instruction based on the Arizona English Language Proficiency Standards. And the links that are provided in this area are both the district website and the state standards at the Arizona Department of Education. The final section in this area are IDEA and ADA learners. We provide a full continuum of services to enrolled students with disabilities from preschool through the 8th grade. This could include walk-in services for preschool or homeschooled services through private placement, depending on the need of students as identified by their IEP. We also provide AM/PM preschool services for students, and we affectionately refer to them as the Sparks, because this year we were able to add a full-day pre-K program thanks to the work of our local legislators, and we call that program the Flames. They are not necessarily identified as having a disability, but they are working in a full-day program, and of course then they can rise to be a Firebird. They're at the Littleton campus. Our district adheres to state and federal laws under the Individuals with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the American with Disabilities Act. A note about our pre-K programs offering is that we partner with Head Start, and that extends our early development offerings for the community. And in this particular item, the links again support information for this area. And that's all I have this evening, and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I had 2 questions. How many counselors or psychologists do we employ?
Member Seniceros, we have a psychologist on every campus. We do not have counselors. We utilize social workers to meet the needs of our students in their social, emotional well-being and character development. We also get ahead of the idea that we want to grow our program, and so we pay for 2 school psychologist interns out of our IDA grants.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Oh yeah, how many % of our students have IEPs?
Member Seniceros, we are on the high end of identification, which is typical for low SES communities. The last time I checked, it was about 13% of our population that have individual education plans.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, I think I'm going to.
President Reyes, members of the governing board. This section covers the areas of school signature programs, leadership and supervision, leadership development, student services, as well as extracurricular activities. Section 4, school signature programs. In Littleton, all students and their families have the opportunity to select the school signature program that best fits their needs. Littleton has removed boundaries to create choice right here in our community schools. We have adopted one district boundary, and we allow our families to request programs at schools across the district that are of the most interest and benefit to individual students. All of our great schools continue to offer a core curriculum based on the state standards, along with art, music, physical education, and technology taught by our highly qualified teachers. What is innovative and incredible for our community is we go a step further by offering focus academies. Instruction centers on more project-based learning with work tailored to the specialty, creating curriculum with an added twist to engage our students. Littleton Elementary School District has 8 focus academies that serve students pre-K through 8th grade, as well as the Underdown Learning Center for students 5th through 8th grade who might need an alternative path. The Arts, Financial Business Academy, Online Academy, 3 STEM signature schools, engineering, computer science, and health science, leadership, and service learning are all available. We have several supporting documents for you to review in the areas of our signature school programs. Under school information, there are links to each school's website where you can learn more about the offerings at each one of our focus academies. Section 5, Leadership and Supervision. The Office of School Leadership oversees the development and performance of our school administration. Administrators meet with the Executive Director of School Leadership in partnership with district directors for coaching support and various professional learning opportunities. During coaching and professional learning community sessions, the focus is on continuous improvement, student learning, leadership development, school and community culture, a focus on results, and equipping leaders with the knowledge, skills, and tools necessary to design and lead high-performing systems here in Littleton. Individual administrator coaching sessions also focus on leadership roles and responsibilities and implementing our district initiatives and programs such as Make Your Day, Kids at Hope, professional learning communities, instructional quality, and the signature school focus. Each leader builds capacity within themselves and their staff through the professional learning community process. They focus on the 3 pillars of a professional learning community, which are collaboration, a focus on learning, and a focus on results to ensure high levels of teaching and learning in all of our schools. Teams of teachers collaborate to answer the 4 critical questions that drive a professional learning community. What do we want our students to know and be able to do? How will we know students have learned these skills? What will we do if students have not learned the skills? And what do we do when students have already shown mastery? During these collaborative times, teams look at essential standards and create pathways to effectively ensure students meet and master the standards. Teams create assessments to monitor learning and use the data to guide instruction and determine next steps, such as re-engagement to help when students have not mastered the learning, or extension when they already know the content. The district has embraced this process and will continue to actively support staff in this important work while developing teachers. Some supporting documents in this area. We have a leadership tab, which is still under construction. We also have 2 supporting documents where you can learn more about our Make Your Day district philosophy, as well as our Kids at Hope program. Section 5B, Student Services. The Office of School Leadership provides resources and support to schools to build and maintain a safe, caring, and healthy school environment that meets the academic, social, emotional, and physical needs of students. When necessary, support is provided for parent concerns, student discipline, mandatory reporting, and managing school-based crises. In addition, the Office of School Leadership offers assistance and support in the area of promotion and retention and monitors truancy violations through our CUTS suppression process. The Office of School Leadership also communicates any changes to policy and our procedures and ensures they are being followed by all of our Littleton schools. School discipline, safety, character development, and attendance of students are monitored through the Office of School Leadership. The office also monitors data for accuracy of records, consistency, and equity in practice, and provides professional training to support our building leaders. When needed, long-term suspension hearings or CUTS hearings are organized. All mandatory reporting is monitored through the Office of School Leadership, including the discipline matrix violations that are required to be reported to any police or law enforcement agencies. The Office of School Leadership, in partnership with our district social workers, provides support services and resources to schools and families to help manage school-based crisis or the need for family and community support. As a vital part of the education team, our robust team of social workers, we have one at every school, helps us to ensure our focus and resources service students and families comprehensively. Social workers within our district work directly with students, they collaborate with teachers, they support administrators, and they partner alongside our psychologists, nurses, and other related service daily to ensure they take care of our students from a whole child point of view. Social workers can provide services that are individual or group counseling, home visits, information about resources, referral for community services, crisis intervention, partnerships with our community agencies, lead prevention programs, or address any behavioral concerns that may interfere with a child's learning. A couple of support documents in this area. We have a social worker page where you can see all 7 of our social workers, and our community can access them using the information provided on our website. We also have a link to our parent-student handbook, which includes information regarding attendance, our discipline matrix, and the truancy cuts suppression program. Finally, 5C speaks about extracurricular activities. The Office of School Leadership, in partnership with the District Athletic Coordinator and site administration, provides direction and oversees extracurricular activities, including athletics and field trips. Direction is provided for the district's athletic program, including sports schedules, communication of events, hiring of coaches and coordinators, safety of play, and ordering and maintaining our equipment. The Office of School Leadership monitors and reproves all in-state and out-of-state field trips. The trips are monitored to ensure alignment to standards, consistency in communication and practice, signature school programs, and our district policies. We have several supporting documents for you to review in the areas of support services, athletics, as well as extracurricular activities. You can find information on the website about Kids at Hope, Make Your Day, the Parent-Student Handbook, attendance, athletics, and our 3 current signature field trips for our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I'm happy to answer any questions before I turn it over to Ms. Garrison.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderwater. Good evening, Madam President and Governing Board. My responsibilities can mostly be divided into 3 groups, and the first one I would like to cover is Family and Enrollment Services. Several years ago, we centralized enrollment and created the Family Welcome Center. It's housed right here at the district office. The idea was to create highly trained staff to enter data and reduce errors as we transmitted the data to the state. The accuracy of this data is important because it's how we are funded for our average daily membership. It's here where we welcome new families to the district and process transfer requests. School choice has allowed us to control class size like many districts cannot. You may or may not know, but we have removed individual school boundaries, and we have one big district boundary now. And each year we allow our families to tell us which program they would like to put their children in. We have developed programs based on demand at each of our schools, and the idea is to create choice right here in our community schools. Don't need to go shopping anywhere else. We have lots of choices right here. And each year, families are invited to request the program that they are of most interest and benefit to individual students. The Welcome Center is also home to our parent liaison, who works to bridge the gap between home and school by connecting parents to needed services. A lot of the work that Ms. Vanderwater just described with the social workers, the parent liaison is involved in those two, especially when they need services that we don't provide here, services bigger than just the school. So, yes, yes. So together, this team at the Welcome Center assists with uniforms, plans for parent involvement, works on student data, makes welfare calls, arranges and provides interpretation services, works with partners to provide classes for community members. You may have seen lately on social media, a lot of classes have been going on, their nutrition classes, play and learn, those type things. That work all comes out of the Family Welcome Center. And they're usually the first ones to meet and greet our families new to our district. So I have placed a link to the enrollment page in this item if you'd like to learn more about the things that happen at the Family Welcome Center. Any questions on that? Okay, the Office of School Support also oversees communication services. You have all met by now your public information officer. He takes the lead on communication efforts and works closely with the superintendent's office and the governing board to promote the district. Efforts include branding, managing social media, developing relationships with local press, responding to public requests for records, and leading the charge to create informed ambassadors to help spread the good work of the district, right? Get the word out there. The communications department assists schools and departments by crafting and translating messages, provides assistance with keeping posted information current, and soliciting support to help increase our reach as we put the information out there. School board members should expect to see emails from Constant Contact, because when we're talking to the entire district, our practice is to make sure that you are in there. And you should have received an email since this meeting started. Mr. Budsman has sent you your bios, and he will be looking for you to approve them and send them back. And they'll be up probably within hours of you returning them to him. Communication is also a key component of our safety plans. Knowing how we would communicate with families in the event of an emergency, as well as a shared understanding of expectations from both sides is key. So communication staff is also involved in recruitment efforts to attract and retain both students and staff, which does include annual and ad hoc surveys to solicit inputs from our stakeholders. Along with routine tasks, efforts this year are to update our bios collectively, the executive team as well as the governing board, and add new pages to our web pages. We work with our host, school webmasters, to refresh information as needed. Although web pages are not as dynamic as social media or web pages, our web pages are organized to have accurate information that would anticipate what community members want. Dr. Freeman talked about this earlier. Anticipate the questions, put them up there so you don't have to have the phone call, you can just go to the information yourself. Some current website projects include a page being developed to support safety information. One is a type of celebration page to document our achievements and information about our leadership efforts. To learn more about our communication efforts, I have placed some links for you to explore. I encourage you to follow us on social media if you do not already. Our Facebook pages are where I go when I need a reminder of what we do, why we do, because gives you the greatest snapshot of what's happening in our classrooms. Any questions on communications? Okay, and next up is technology services. The technology department is led by a director and consists of individuals skilled in the area of network, data, communications, audiovisual equipment, and is responsible for supporting connectivity across the district. Of course, this team is not only tasked with keeping us connected, but also to keep students and staff safe as they utilize the district resources to learn and to work. Also, this department supports our effective integration of technology in our classrooms. Our STEM instructional specialist, a teacher on special assignment, provides training, modeling, and feedback to enhance the use of technology across the district. On the technology services page, you'll find a link to the family resources. Did you want to open this one so they could see at the top? Find a link to the family resources page, a teacher resources page, and information to connect with questions for both staff and family right there. So just help is just a click away. Another thing I'd like to highlight is we offer student laptop insurance and the ability to pay for lost or damaged technology through My School Bucks. My School Bucks is an online portal that allows parents to pay anytime, anywhere from a mobile phone or a computer. There's also another bit of information that I would just like to highlight. The data team that's here that plays a critical support role. They take a lead in training staff on the student information system and working with multiple vendors to securely transfer data between enterprise software. They consistently work to maintain the integrity of the data so students have access to digital curriculum, staff can work efficiently, and the data gets transmitted to the state correctly so we can receive proper payments. So to learn more about the work of our amazing technology team, please visit our website. I put some links there for you as well. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board. I am going to be reviewing 3 items this evening. Item C1 is the business and financial services. Item C2 is the operational services. And finally, item C3 is the nutrition services. So Jim, if we go to C1A, the business office is responsible for many of the essential day-to-day operations of the school district. Business Resources oversees the daily activities listed in your board packet to ensure compliance to local, state, and federal requirements, as well as to ensure schools and departments can run as effectively and efficiently as possible. Business Resources works directly with club sponsors, secretaries, school administration, and directors, ensuring they understand their operational budgets, as well as the process needed to follow and comply with district policies. Some areas that I would like to touch briefly on this evening are roles of the Business Resources Department consists of, including budget, handbooks, the USFR and chart of accounts, risk management, audit, employee benefits, and procurement. If we go to the budget. The budget process is dictated by Arizona Revised Statute and places certain guidelines on when the district is required to have the governing board propose, adopt, and revise the fiscal year budget. Dr. Freeman touched on this briefly in his introduction, but if we look at the assembly here, This is an item that I add to every board adoption, proposal, and revision, just to remind the board kind of that the budget process is a cyclical process that we go through every year. Behind the scenes, the business office is constantly monitoring expenditures of all district funds, which are state and local grants and cash, because each group of funds has different allowable uses and requirements. You can think of district's funds as buckets of money, each having rules on how it can or must be spent. The business department's job is to know how the buckets can be used and ensure all rules are followed. The budget process is a year-long process and overlaps into other budget cycles. There are many times throughout the year the business department is working in multiple fiscal years, finalizing the old budget cycle by preparing the annual financial report for board review or projecting into the next fiscal year. To give you an idea of the timeline the district works on, you can refer to the budget process section of the handout. On the Business Resources webpage, you can also find the annual expenditure budgets, annual financial reports, as well as the financial recognition awards the district has received for excellence in financial reporting. Some of the restraints the district is working through currently is the high inflation hitting the United States. Currently, the state legislature is required to fund an inflationary factor in the school funding formula by either the Consumer Price Index, CPI, or 2%, whichever is lower. That means if inflation is 8% this year, legislature is only required by law to fund the lower of the two numbers, which would be 2%. Conceptually, this means the district would have to determine where to provide the increase and potentially remove or reduce positions and or programming to make up the difference. If we moved over to handbooks. The Business Resources Department maintains several handbooks intended to help end users with processes they may be responsible for at their school sites or departments. These handbooks include the Student Activities Handbook, Auxiliary Operations Handbook, Tax Credit Handbook, and Cash Handling and Deposit Handbooks. Copies of each of these handbooks are attached to this item. We move forward to the USFR and Chart of Accounts. The Uniform System of Financial Records, or the USFR, has been developed by the Office of the Auditor General and the Arizona Department of Education. The USFR prescribes the minimum internal control policies and procedures to be used by Arizona school districts for accounting, financial reporting, budgeting, and attendance reporting, amongst others. We have attached a link to the Auditor General's website, as well as the most recent account code reference guide developed by our staff. The Business Resources Department provides this reference guide to all employees who are responsible for managing budgets and making budget requests. Of course.
Madam President, members of the board, there's 3 education delivery systems in our state now. School districts, which follow this, charters, which have a different set of rules, and vouchers and STOs, which seem to have none. And this, of course, explains the amount of attention administration has to pay to accountability. So it is one of our legislative priorities to try to get a similar amount of accountability, responsibility, transparency, and reporting in all of the state's systems. And, you know, I think probably all of you understand why. But I just wanted to make clear that while we're doing all of this to expend the taxpayers' money, everybody isn't.
Thank you.
Moving forward to risk management. The district uses the Arizona School Risk Retention Trust, or we refer to as the trust, as a property, casualty, and liability insurer. The Business Resources Department is the primary contact for the trust and works with the Operations Department to mitigate potential risks on district property. The Business Resources Department meets with the trust at least annually to review claims from the current year and look at renewal rates for the next year. Moving forward to auditing. The Business Resources Office is the central contact for many audits conducted in the district. While oversight of audits falls primarily on the business office, many departments and programs are subject to audits by various state and federal entities. These types of audits are sometimes performed on an annual basis, but others are done at random. A list of common audits is listed in the auditing section of this handout. One audit I would like to touch on briefly is the annual financial statements audit, the single audit provided by our external auditors. The results of these audits is used for continuous improvement in internal controls and are used by the Arizona Auditor General in creation of the classroom spending report. A link to the latest Auditor General classroom spending report has been provided in the handout. If we move forward to employee benefits, Littleton has been participating in a self-funded insurance program since 2009. The district currently offers multiple options for employees for medical, dental, and vision coverage. Employees can utilize an online benefit enrollment program and has access to view benefit elections, costs, and detailed information about all benefits offered by the district. Preventative care such as on-site mammograms, biometric screenings, flu shots, and vaccinations have also been made available to employees through this benefit program. Attached, you'll find the benefits online enrollment user guide for new hires and used during open enrollment. If we move forward to procurement, all district procurement is overseen by business resources. Procurement includes, but is not limited to, land, construction, vehicles, furniture, equipment, professional and technical services, and supplies. The district must comply with school procurement rules, the USFR, Arizona Revised Statutes, as well as governing board policy. For example, purchases of $10,000 to $99,999 require the district to obtain 3 written quotes for goods and services. Purchases over $100,000 require a request for proposal or an RFP or an invitation to bid, IFB. The Business Resources Department will bring these items to the board for approval to advertise due to the amount anticipated to be spent and the length of time an RFP or IFB take. It is not uncommon for these processes to take over 30 days from start to finish. The district can also utilize purchasing cooperatives to procure goods and services, ensure compliance with rules and regulations, and receive competitive pricing with volume discounts. An example of this is the architectural services required to build a new school at Lake and Prep. The district was able to obtain services since we belong to a cooperative purchasing consortium for the architect. For this example, ADM Group had already responded to a competitive bid process. A list of purchasing cooperatives Littleton utilizes are presented to the board on an annual basis and listed under the procurement section of this document. I'd like to pause to see if anybody has any questions before I transition to operational services. Okay. The Operational Services Department oversees all aspects of facility maintenance, facility use, energy management, and upkeep of athletic fields and school grounds. Other areas under this department's purview include safety, security, and emergency planning, as well as transportation. The Operations Department cleans and maintains approximately 725,000 square feet of district buildings and 90 acres of ground. To do this efficiently and effectively, the department utilizes a number of programs, including but not limited to electronic work orders, an energy management system, and preventative maintenance program. The department is able to monitor and create reports for all of these programs, allowing the district to effectively utilize taxpayer dollars allocated to these areas. A link to the Operational Resources web page is attached to this section. We move forward to safety and emergency planning. Littleton has instituted many safety and security measures, including security surveillance, third-party alarm monitoring system, a district safety committee comprised of district and staff, school-level staff, an electronic key fob system allowing staff access to rooms and buildings assigned to their access needs. The district has also developed a strong relationship with local law enforcement over the last several years. This relationship has been developed because both organizations are committed to the safety and well-being of our students, parents, and staff. The District Safety Committee meets to develop and monitor required staff trainings and drills. These drills include practice safety drills, monthly fire drills, quarterly lockdown drills, and semi-annual bus evacuations. They also assist in training of district personnel in using campus emergency response plans. A copy of a portion of the emergency response plan is attached to your this item. And Dr. Freeman had alluded to the fact that we didn't add the entire comprehensive plan because we didn't want it getting out and, you know, the bad guys knowing what we had planned. Moving forward to transportation, the transportation department manages a fleet of 31 school buses, ranging from special education buses to 84 passenger buses, as well as a white fleet of employee vehicles and equipment. With district-wide school choice, the transportation department operates approximately 65 bus routes per day. In a normal year, there are over 1,300 students that are transported to school each day. In addition, there are typically between 30 and 40 in-district after-school sports trips and 2 field trips per month. Student safety is a top priority of the district. With this in mind, individual buses are inspected twice daily by the driver assigned to the bus and are recorded electronically by a software the district also uses to monitor buses via GPS and create a passenger listing for each trip. Attached is a link to the Transportation Services website. Under other operational services, this is basically talking about Arizona Revised Statute 11952, which allows public agencies to enter into joint agreements with other agencies. Littleton currently maintains an intergovernmental agreement, or an IGA, with Union Elementary School District to provide maintenance of HVAC systems and vehicle maintenance. Lastly, I'd like to go over nutritional services with the board. The district has outsourced the daily operations of our food service program to a professional food service provider. This service is required to be awarded via an RFP every 5 years. Since 2010, Southwest Food Service Excellence, or SFE, has functioned as a contracted service for Littleton and operates on a reimbursement. Monies received from the National School Lunch Program. The food service program operates a breakfast and lunch program to ensure meals are nutritionally analyzed to meet federal and state standards. Breakfast in the classroom is made available free of charge to all district students. Breakfast is delivered to each classroom each morning, and students get to eat breakfast while listening to morning announcements and while teachers take attendance. This ensures no instructional time is lost and students start their day with a healthy meal. A link to the food service website is attached to this item as well. Be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Yes, sir, Mr. French. With regards to the transportation, I know this has been problematic this year. Are there any plans in place to maybe, secure more drivers and retain them? Because I know that there are a great deal of drivers, and that's been an issue with regard to a lot of our schools.
Yeah, Madam President, Member Barnett, drivers and the amount of drivers that we have is always a top priority of the district. It seems like no area of the district is immune from labor shortages. We always have questions about, getting more teachers. We're always having questions about getting drivers, CDL drivers, that are eligible to drive our buses. So we are actively working with the HR department to recruit and retain drivers to ensure that we don't have any transportation interruptions going forward. Madam President, yes, they are all benefited employees.
I know I saw one of the other districts had huge signs hanging, bus drivers. I think everybody needs bus drivers.
Some districts have just plain canceled routes and told parents
Yes.
they're on their own.
They have to provide their own transportation.
So it's an issue on the support side because other commercial non-government entities have been able to respond to paying people in the trades and services by raising prices. And the board's constrained by whatever the legislative appropriation is. Mr. French already told you that the amount allocated to schools is not required to be the same as inflation, and it hasn't been for years. So we've been falling behind wage inflation relative to the market. So the market puts a lot more pressure on support services. The pay for bus drivers for the city of Phoenix, the pay for HVAC repairmen at an air conditioning company, the pay for plumbers in a private business. All of those other areas are changing their fee structure. I mean, I think all of us are paying more for different things and different services, while the school district budget is constrained. So we have to often really, to recruit and retain, appeal to people who have little kids who want to be on the same calendar as their children. So that's an uncompensated benefit that helps us, used to help us with nursing. We can't get nurses now, are priced way out of reach for us. So we're using other healthcare providers' certificate levels. But that's a huge problem. Just the increase in minimum wage that was required by proposition that the legislature didn't offset for school district funding. Part of the reason ESI is doing the substitutes is because that same law required a sick day benefit for, I think, I can't remember, every 6 hours worked every so often, and we were responsible for that benefit whether they worked for us for that time or not. So if you worked part-time for anybody, everybody owed you sick leave. So we had to put it under the umbrella of one company to monitor sick leave that was voter approved, to be able to not fall behind on that. So there are a number of issues, which are, going to come to your attention in governance with implementation that are really limited by policy decisions made down at the State House. And I think it is important for constituents to be aware. One of the things that I think is a struggle for us in our district is our representatives in the legislature have been aware and have been advocating. But in a lot of other districts and in the legislature today, that's not true. They've been trying to shrink the education budget. And in fact, one of the Republican leaders was on the radio the other day thinking that we don't need to pass the AEL, there's plenty of money. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area, but that's an area that's particularly sensitive to us because the market is so far apart from the support share of the appropriation from the legislature. It's challenging. So some of the things we've done with the number of routes and the number of kids is be able to, and the additional routes is to be able to provide bus drivers with a full-time job and compensation for summer school when we were able to expand that last year so that it does become more of a living wage. But it is limited by, if we increase salaries and wages on the support side, it competes with the teacher side. It's always tough to balance.
That makes sense. One other question with regards to that. I know that the Phoenix Job Corps program, the students there, many of them who enter into a certain trade, they are given their CDL, they enter that program. I know that a lot of those students come out without employment, so might that be a consideration to, partner with the Phoenix Job Corps Center?
Yeah, definitely. Member Bennett, we are looking for any and all qualified applicants to join the Littleton family. Member Contreras, I believe Tolleson Union had wrote a grant through the A for Arizona grant process, and I think that's what you're referring to. we are looking at all of the grant opportunities that we have available to us, and between business services and the federal programs director that reports to Dr. Haid, trying to get every dollar that we can to benefit the district and the students.
Thank you.
Hearing none?
I did just want to point out one other thing, because I think it's important to your community and your constituents. Mr. Verrill, if you could go back to the safety item 2B, and there's one page in that attachment that I wanted to point out. It's item C2B. It was like, you were only like 3 items away from it a minute ago. Keep going. That's number 1, number 2, and B, and the attachment. And I'm looking for the table of contents. So in the safety plan, this is the outline of all the things that, you know, are considered, organized, and implemented when there's a problem. But standard response protocols, if you scroll down to that, I just want to make the board aware that there is a plan in place and roles for everybody for all of these things. So scroll a little slower. It's not the end of a movie.
But it is.
But it is the end of the movie. Sorry. But you can see, I mean, this is an especially comprehensive list, and that's not because we've lived through all of these disasters, but we've had to deal with many of these, but we collaborate with other agencies on support and teasing this out so that there are roles and responses defined and thought out in advance for all of these things, because you never know, you know, what day under one circumstance we might have to provide for the safety and welfare of our kids, teachers, and constituents.
Unfortunately, we've had a few.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's several of those that, you know, we could check off as, yeah, having had done, you know, in my, probably your tenure as well, President Reyes.
Yes.
I move that we adjourn at 7:53.
I'll second that.